Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Reuben Olson.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cryptid Clues. I am one of your hosts, Taylor.
I'm your other host, Reuben.
And today we have a very special episode as we are joined by the producer of the Sierra Sounds, author of Quantum Bigfoot and Voices in the Wilderness, Mr. Ron Morehead. Ron, thank you so much for being here. We're both so excited to hear you speak about the Sierra Sounds, and feel free to tell everyone a bit about yourself, and then we can dive into the nitty-gritty with some casual questions along the way.
Well, I'm just who I am. I ran across these Bigfoot with some other guys in the Sierra Nevada Mountains in 1971. And anyway, I've been researching it ever since for over 50 years now. And I'm an experiencer. Actually, I've experienced these things, which is kind of unusual, I guess, for most people to have these multiple encounters like we had. And trying to put a finger on it was the issue in those days. We kept thinking they were just an ape running around the woods that hadn't been identified yet, and I've come to find out, or believe anyway, that they're much more than that. So got involved in 71 when I went into this hunting camp, which was 8 miles in the wilderness, and very remote, imposing area to get to, but beautiful once you get there. And these things just started coming around our camp at night, and we thought at the time, it's a hunting camp, so we weren't looking for Bigfoot at the time, but you got to wonder what you're dealing with. You don't know. Bigfoot was not on our radar. It was on mine because I went up there because one guy wouldn't go back unless he had somebody go with him. So I went with him just to see if the other guys were okay, because at that time you don't know if they're going to be eaten or what. They just know there's some kind of a monster up there, they thought, and these things are sounded very aggressive, very malicious. So heavily armed, all of us were. We had guns, and always have had, always will have, probably going up there, because you don't know what you're going to run into. It could be a rattlesnake or an angry bear or whatever. So anyway, that's how it kind of started with me. Since then, I've written a couple books and produced a couple CDs with the sounds on them, and it's been quite exciting. So you guys just bust right in and ask me a question anytime you want to.
Absolutely. I mean, Taylor and I have talked about our history with the Bigfoot topic on our show before, and I was kind of curious to ask you, what was your first introduction to the concept of Bigfoot? Because I know there wasn't a whole lot back then, but you kind of really, when you went into it, you've discovered so much more since.
Yeah, well, the only thing I had a vague memory of was the Patterson film of 1967, and of course, once we encountered these things up there, I started researching everything I could to try to determine what we're dealing with. Very religious background, all of us had that, and we couldn't quite put that in our paradigm, Since then, I'm not religious, but I'm definitely spiritual, like we all are, whether we like it or not. We thought we was just encountering a strange being in the woods, and we underestimated what we're dealing with at the time grossly. It wasn't until 1972 when we asked Alan Berry, an investigative reporter, to go in with us, and he was trying to determine a hoax. He was looking for a hoax, which we didn't know at the time. he was sent there by via Ivan Sanderson, a cryptozoologist, who sent a letter to Peter Byrne, who was a Bigfoot researcher in Oregon. And Peter, thinking the same thing, is probably a hoax. Nobody has these type of encounters. So he sent it down to Alan Berry, who was in Redding, California. He came down and interviewed us, and we invited him in 1972. So he started experiencing the same thing we did, even though he couldn't find a hoax. He looked, well, I found out later, he's looking through our packs when we were out walking and all kinds of things, trying to find somebody who could be pulling his leg. But when you're 8 miles in the wilderness, and quite a trip to get in there, you got to wonder, well, who would do something like this anyway? Leave no signs except their big footprints and their big voices. So he fostered the studies actually done on these sounds in 1976, I think it was, by Professor Curlent. He's an electrical engineer, professor of electrical engineering at the University of Wyoming. And he determined that the sounds were not manipulated. He had the original recordings from Alan Berry, and he said that they were not speeded up or slowed down, and not backwards, not played any other way. They were original. There were no 60-cycle hum in them, which would have showed pre-recording or re-recording. And a lot of people that he was running into, a lot of academia that he was trying to get to study these before Dr. Curlin, was kind of making fun of him, thinking they were trying to get tricked into studying some kind of a myth, But actually, he had taken it to Teibel in New York City first. These are the people that studied the Watergate tapes, and he thought, well, just go top notch and see what they'll do. Well, they don't do that stuff for free, but they did look at them, did just a quickie, and they said that there's no 60-cycle hum, too powerful to have been human-made, and kind of gave a whole report on it. Not a whole report, but just a report. Actually, Al Berry details the conversation he had with Ivy Teibel in his book, Bigfoot. He co-wrote with Ann Slade, 1978, I think it was, something like that. So you can read that whole report there. But anyway, Dr. Curlin took an unbiased look. He said, I just want to know if this is real or if it's not real. And Dr. Curlin said, it's real. And you get a professor behind it who's written well over 100 papers, and he ended up writing a paper on it and presented to the Anthropology of the Unknown in British Columbia, 1978, I guess it was, yeah. And subsequently it was published in a book, Man Like Monsters on Trial, in 1980 by UCB Press. And his whole report's in that book, and I want to read it. But it shows the study that he did, shows the actual where the language was. In other words, it showed the average human box here. That's our average where we speak. And these things were inside, outside, above, and below, and in the human range. So that was a big step, for a professor to make that statement. He says, this is real. Whatever did this is real. But that wasn't enough for most academia. It's hard to get these guys that train in parameters of classical science to accept that these things are more than just an ape around the woods. So they are more than that. And my studies have showed that they're much more than that. And my experiences have showed they're much more than that. So that's why I'm on this program with you today, because Al Berry fostered those studies. And it wasn't until 2008 till a cryptolinguist got a hold of the tapes by accident through the BFRO.org net. Matt Moneymaker, before he started the BFRO, came up and talked to me, wanted to hear the sounds, and then he started the BFRO right after that, 1996, I think it was, and he put them on his website. So this cryptolinguist, who was trained by the military, Navy, as a cryptolinguist to transcribe sounds to see if it's a language or if it's any decoding in it to be done, or if there's any deception in it. He was trained to do all that. He was then teaching foreign languages in Missouri, but he drove all the way out to California to interview Al Berry and myself and find out the context of these sounds that we'd been recording. And I got to say, all of us were recording. There's 5 of us who all had our recorders sticking out, so all kinds of stuff was corroborated by other tapes. But his was clear, and mine were very, very, very clear. I had the best cassette tape you could buy. It was run by D-cell batteries that you could pack in on a mule if you protected it good. And I had stereo mics outside the shelter we're in, this log shelter. And you could hear these things walking out there with a headset on. But all that burned up in my house fire in 1976. So I didn't have my original recordings, but Al Berry had his good ones. So that's what most people are hearing now, except for the ones I did record in 1974, which 2 years before the house fire. But I had sent something I recorded off to Alan Berry to listen to it because I was interacting with these things. By then, we become what we thought was friendly, but we don't know what friendly means to them. So I sent that off to Alan. He sent it back to me, and subsequently I wrote my story on my second CD, Bigfoot Recordings Volume 2. So it just goes on from there. I've traveled pretty much around the world researching different enigmas. I've been in South America a couple times on expeditions and been into Siberia, Nepal, Russia, just looking at and being active trying to find out, to get to the bottom of this, because there's more going on than what meets our eye. And I get into quantum physics because classical science does not allow for what we were seeing up there. It just doesn't fit. Everything in classical science, which is Newtonian physics, is based on everything being material or physical and measurable, predictable. That's not what really happens. Everything is not that way. It just works that way in our three-dimensional environment. You get out of that and you get into quantum physics, which determines there's more dimensions besides our three that we live in, and it's mathematically established and been accepted by physicists, but you don't see those, and it's called the quantum, and most people think, well, it only works in the micro world, little things like your microwave oven or your cell phone, something like that, but that's not true. According to Professor Christopher Bland at the West Texas A&M, he says everything from the atom to the cosmos works according to quantum laws. So for those people that think it's just for the small world, no, it starts in the small world, but it goes all the way through the cosmos. So it's in us, it's everywhere. And you just have to realize that we don't see everything there is to see, and we don't experience everything there is to experience. We only see within light's frequency. Everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, according to science. And you get into the frequency of light, and it's between 440 terahertz and 770 terahertz. And all these other frequencies are out there that we don't see. And that's where I think people see different things, different aspects anyway. We don't hear like ultrasound or infrasound, but they're out there. So I think once people open their minds up and realize that there's just more going on that you don't know about, then you're open to accepting some of the theories I got about how these things do what they do. For years and years, I've been interviewing people, and they tell me about these enigmas, these different things associated with these beings, and disappearing, trackway stopping, and things like that. And you got to kind of figure this out, because it happened to me finally. Wow. Like I say, then we were underestimating them a lot. I don't do that anymore. I'm not surprised at anything that happens anymore, just because everything can happen. We live in a kind of a matrix type environment. But I go on and on. So if you want to ask me something, just shoot right in.
The matrix type environment, we've talked a little bit on the quantum subject in some previous episodes, and I think our stance is kind of we accept every possibility, because until something is definite, proven, and accepted, when science finally dives into quantum and spirituality and all that, and it starts to become more reality to everyone else, with what little we know of Bigfoot, it's everything out there is possible. I definitely sit more on, I'd have to agree with you, Ron. One of the things I wanted to ask you is your feeling in your first encounter versus how it started to change throughout your next few encounters.
Yeah, well, the first encounter is a little bit tense, because you don't know, again, what you're dealing with. You don't know if those things are making these sounds out there to come in and argue on who's going to eat you first, or who's going to carry you away, or if they're arguing over the food you left. You just don't know. So you're there with your guns ready to go, and we all had those guns to hunting camp, and I would never have gone in there without some type of a gun. Not that you need protection from them, but it still gives you a little bit of security. But there's also other things that can bother you in the backwoods of the Nevada mountains.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I've got a hat band made out of a 52-inch rattlesnake, so generally, if I just go up to the light, I'll just take a small gun with a snake loads in it, so I can scare a bear off too if they come around your food and they want to have it more than they think they want it more than you do. And so really, the first encounters were kind of like that, but after a while, you realize they're not coming in after you, and we started dealing with them, started calling out after them, and started trying to interact with them, and very elusive these things are.
Yeah, that's very noticeable in the tapes as we listen through all the different sounds. Because the first experience when I listened to the Sierra sounds, it was terrifying to me. I can't imagine actually being there. But throughout every encounter after that, I can only imagine as you start to accept these things that you'd want to kind of reach out and see what responses you could get back. It's absolutely amazing what you've been through.
Yeah.
If you could, sorry, you first, Ron.
No, I was just going to say, you can't just leave when that stuff happens. It's dark. You're 8 miles in the wilderness, hardly any trail in and out. You got to know where it's at to get there, and it's just you can't leave. One of the guys, once this happened to him up there when it first started going on in '71, he left, and he just left a note to the guys. He said, "I'm out of here." He's a very religious person. He didn't know where to put that in his paradigm, because giants aren't supposed to be around. These things are monsters, whatever they are. He left, and the guys didn't come out where they're supposed to, so the wives wanted to know what's going on. They get eaten, they get hurt, what's going on. So he would go back just to check them out, but he wouldn't go back by himself. So that's how I got involved, really. That was '71. And after that, I started going up as often as I could. The guys were okay, by the way. They obviously didn't get eaten. And so I started going back as much as I could with somebody to go with me, one of the guys, and kept experiencing the things. And it wasn't until '74 when I got a glimpse of one, and when they started interacting with us while we're outside the shelter, and that was pretty unique, because most of the time, it was just two of us in camp at the time. We came in with horses and mules to bring supplies in, and we were keeping the supplies in some ring barrels up there, so the bears wouldn't get them, and we could have stuff when we got up there. We'd have our sleeping bags and food and things like that. So when you did walk in without animals, you could you'd have your stuff there. A whole lot easier to walk without a big old 65-pound pack on your back, right? And so that was 1974 when I got that glimpse of one, and I was interacting with him outside, and that's when I made the second CD, which represents that night, which was pretty unique.
If you could hop back in time to those previous encounters as you are now with your experiences and views on Bigfoot and the whole topic, what would you change about your experience if you could?
Well, I wouldn't have underestimated. I wouldn't have thinking, when I was trying to communicate with them that night, or I was mimicking them, thinking they were just making noises. I didn't realize the significance of language, which we found out they have an actual language like humans do, which brings me to a whole other field of this thing. But I would change how I acted around them. I respected them more, because we were thinking, these things are big, but they're afraid of us. Well, they weren't afraid of us. They were just playing with us. And for some reason, they were trying to say something to me that night, and I got it recorded. Got the little tape recorder out of my saddlebag and turned it on. And anyway, it was quite a unique night. I would have responded differently, probably. But I was getting kind of bold then. It was three years after this, 1974. It all started in '71, and I realized that of course, when you're 29, that's all I was then. 29. Oh, see, it started when I was 29, 1971, and I was early 30s, and nothing can hurt you then. I mean, I thought, whatever happens, nothing can hurt me, and I was one of those guys that just went for it. So I started mimicking them, thinking I was, but they were having fun with us, I think. So what I would do different is just respect them more and know what they were, or what they are. What they were trying to do is say something to me, and I underestimated that. I thought they were just making noises.
At what point did you start to feel that Bigfoot was something more involved with the quantum realm? Was it towards the end of your encounters, or?
Yeah, I didn't understand quantum physics at the time. We just kind of put that stuff on the shelf, because you see the lights floating around, you see sounds that you can't identify, the source of it. One time we thought our camp was being tore apart out there when we were inside the shelter, and we look out there later and nothing had changed at all. you can't put a finger on that. So you kind of just set it on the shelf, and but there's some enigmas associated with it. And I asked the other guys, "Do you ever talk about this stuff?" Because there's still a couple of them still alive. And I said, they said, well, Bill told me just a few months ago when I was seeing him. He said, it's hard enough to get people to believe that there's a Bigfoot out there, much less the stuff that happened to us up there. So, so they don't talk about it like I do. I get out and just say it. I'm close to 80 years old now, and I want what happened to us to be part of what people understand. And if they want to believe me, fine. If they don't, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and it's all truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
My theories about it is where people can get off in a tangent because they don't want to understand anything outside of their three-dimensional parameters they've drawn for themselves, which is, again, Newtonian physics. But quantum physics rides on the back of that. We have to live in a three-dimensional environment, so you have to live with things that are measurable and predictable, but understand that there's more going on that's not measurable. And when I was just a little boy, I used to ask, well, how far is it to the end of the universe? And nobody could answer that. And to this day, nobody can answer that. So everything is not measurable, and quantum physics is unpredictable. So things are different if you just get into studying it. But you got to put those sciences together to have clear perception. According to Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception. But you find a lot of researchers just won't go with that. They have to set up a camera trap or something. Trying to get some hard evidence. Well, that's not going to be hard evidence anyway. There's been camera traps tripped and stuff like. We tried to set up camera traps, and again, that's something I would have done differently because you can't trick these things. I mean, as much as we tried, you couldn't trick them. It's either going to be an accident or they're going to let you do it. When these people get a picture like the Patterson film and like the Freeman footage, those things are out there for people to look at, and I believe them to be real. The only thing that brings about a little bit of cloud around the Patterson film is you can't see the original film. It's all second, which has been, well, we don't know what else went on with that film besides just what you saw. But it's been studied a lot, second to only the Kennedy assassination is what I've heard. And the people that I know are forensic people, all the way from Hollywood to professors who looked at it thoroughly and believe it's real. So, again, you don't know what else went on there besides just that film footage there, but that's what puts the cloud over it, is that right there. But most people, believe it's real, I think. But
Yeah,
some people
I think
just still can't get a finger on it,
I think it's definitely starting to open up a lot more because, me growing up, I'm 30 now. I wish I could go out into the woods and explore. It's something I really want to do, but growing up and seeing this kind of stuff on TV and reading about it, all the theories that are out there and how it all really kind of boils down to what Bigfoot is, and it opens you up to the quantum stuff too. It's being accepted more and more, I find.
It certainly is. I think you're right on it, Reuben. I talk at these conventions, and there's not hundreds anymore. There's thousands of people there, and a lot of interest in this.
Yeah.
I'm on these podcasts like with you right now several times. I'll be on 4 or 5 this week, and it's what I do now, and more and more people are hooking into the quantum aspect of this because why don't you find a body? How can a trackway disappear? All these things are questions that people ask that they throw it out the window when they hear that. And I used to too. When you're thinking they're just an animal in the woods, nothing else. Well, the trackway stops. Well, you think, what, a helicopter picked them up? What happened? How can that be? Well, it happened to me. My daughter had a sighting. She's seen them 3 times, by the way. She had a sighting. We found the trackway very deep, very something really dense made that. We couldn't even make a print in the ground at the time. And I followed the trackway, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And now, how does that make any sense? How could it stop? Would it jump to a tree to go to a boulder? None of that happened. So you got to kind of wonder, how does that work with science? Because Al Berry, who we took up there originally in 72, he said, whatever you do, stay with science when you talk about this, or you won't be invited to talk anywhere. For years and years, we just talked about the sounds and what we had captured on tape, and that's all we talked about. But now I talk about the enigmas that we encountered up there too, and that's what I. So anyway, quantum quantum physics will answer that question. If they can change their matter into energy through frequency, vibration, everything's frequency, energy, vibration. That's science, go Tesla. And that was established actually by Dr. Paul Dirac in 1933. He won a Nobel Prize for the equation in quantum physics that established matter can change into energy. Well, that was just an equation, but it was accepted. He won a Nobel Prize for it. But you get into 2012 at CERN in Switzerland, they established it physically. It can happen through the collider over there. So energy can change into, or matter can change into energy. Of course, according to Stephen Hawkins, professors all over, energy, I've accepted that energy cannot die. And we are all, at the most minute level of our existence, made of energy. And it's vibrating at a frequency. And if you can change the frequency of something, you can change the matter. That's Einstein. If you find the frequency of anything, you can change what it's made of. That's kind of hard for people to get a hold of, because you think your linear time is just floating along and everything's happening to you. Well, everything's happening for you. We're in a world of experiences, and we got to understand those experiences are here for us to grow by. There's no such thing as losing. You either win or you learn something. So we're learning something from every experience. How you respond to that experience is what's going to change your personal vibrational frequency to a higher level, so you can step out of this into a better environment once you do pass out of this embodiment. Again, energy doesn't die. So if energy doesn't die, and these things have a way of changing their matter into frequency, that would show that would give account for these people that say they saw them disappear right in front of their eyes. And I've had that happen, not to me, but to a couple of people I'm very, very close to, and very trustworthy. They didn't imagine it. It was right where a physical one had been seen, and now here's one. Somebody's seen just a pixelation of one, and I think that's when they're going through the fourth dimension to the fifth, when the plasma field of time is capturing just a pixelation. And I was involved in this, so David Paulides, this Missing 401 The Hunted, here in 2018, he produced on a DVD, interviewed me at the camp. I took him up there, him and his videographer. And right after my segment on that, there's a lady who was bow hunting. She was tree hunting. She was in a tree stand, and she saw this pixelated form go from one tree to another. Same time, somebody ought to watch that if they want to see this, because it's a lot. They call it the predator effect, because it's just that. Pixelation, And at the same time, there was a many, I think over 30 students down at the school, a ways away, was watching a UFO. So there's probably a connection there with aliens. And now that the government says we can believe in aliens and UFOs, well, I can talk about that freely and openly, because I saw one up there. Something strange coming down from the sky. I thought it was the moon, looked like a moon anyway, but it was blue, and it wasn't the moon. It was being controlled, what it was. And we lost sight of it in the trees. But that was all happening when the Bigfoot stuff was going on. Mm-hmm. And that also, the other anomalies. One time in the daytime, you hear this big whooping sound, or not whooping, but tuning fork type sound, huge. You couldn't find the source of it. So things can go out of our perception. We just don't see all frequencies. Camera's lens will see more frequencies than our eyes do. And that's what you can pick up orbs with, is a camera sometimes. Take pictures of the dark, and you might see a big orb out there somewhere. Yep. It's just a form of energy. And if these things can change, like I said, their matter into energy, which quantum-wise it can happen, can they change it back? How do they do that? And where do they live? How come no body's been found? Mm-hmm. There's a reason for that. And I think you have to delve into quantum physics to understand a little bit more. You will never totally understand how nothing can have an end to it, like the universe. You just have to conceive it. So you have to conceive the idea of what this physicists are telling us. And they're all over. The word's out. It can happen. Our mind can change things. How does telekinesis work? How does telepathy work? How does our consciousness work? It all gets into who we really are as human beings, and what makes us what we are. I have a theory on all that, from the troglodytes, with the cavemen who evolved. Something I think aliens have probably messed with us, different species on this earth for eons of time, probably before we were even. But our history begins a few thousand years ago when I think the light beings, which, by the way, God in the ancient text is plural, and so then you have these stories about these light beings coming down from the heavens and skies, and they call them gods. So that's what I think made us from the troglodytes, and we are special. It made us in that image of that. It makes us something unique. But these things have some unique abilities too, but they're not human like us. They have a human component to them, but they're not human like us. And so what had some alien do? Because that determined by the nuclear DNA. The mitochondrial DNA, which has been studied, shows that there is a human component to them. So for a long time, the study that was done on that had a thumbs down because they say, well, it's contaminated. Some humans touched it. Well, now there's a new paper out that says, no, maybe it's just the relic hominid has crossbred and inbred with humanoids so much, which means 23 chromosomes, pairs, and instead of 24 like the great ape has, they could interbreed with us. And there's all kinds of stories from native lore on that says they took their women. So is that happening? It happened in biblical days. You hear about the angels coming down, fallen angels, if you want to call them that. I call them aliens now because they are aliens. They're different than us anyway. And they're just a different frequency than we are. We're set at a certain pace to experience this 3D world that we're living in. And again, I just keep rattling on. So
yeah, no, I was going to say, Ron, I mean, you've been on a lot of podcasts and stuff recently. You're out there making a difference with this topic, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
I was going to pass it back over to Taylor here to see if he had any questions he wanted to ask.
He's been awful quiet, isn't he?
This is amazing. I love hearing all this information. This is incredible. So, I was curious though. So, kind of touching back on listening to the communication when you were back at the Sierra camp, do you ever wonder what it was they were trying to maybe relate to you or communicate to you now that you detected the language?
Oh, Taylor, that's been a question I've had for 50 years. Because the cryptolinguist who transcribed the language, he couldn't translate it, but he transcribed it as a language, which means they have a morphine stream of words which make a sentence like I'm talking to you guys now. Unlike other animals in the woods, dolphins can't do that. Whales don't do that. Monkeys don't do that. Nothing does that except humans. These things can do that. And that's what puts it unique. And I've often wondered what they were trying to tell me. I have asked Scott Nelson, who's a cryptolinguist, I says, any way to find out what they're saying? He says, until one comes in, sits down, and looks at a tree and says, ooga, ooga, that's a tree. You don't know that ooga, ooga means a tree. Mm-hmm. So you just know that ooga, ooga was some kind of word he had. So who knows? I hope to find out. I've had a lot of people tell me they know what they're saying, but when these people, all of them tell you something different, you don't know who to believe, and if you're going to believe any of them. So until I receive it through my pineal gland and understand it myself, I'm probably not going to take what somebody else says that they're saying. If I can believe, I just got to believe what I can receive. I try not to be influenced by outside forces too much. I'd rather just meditate and try to receive information. Mm-hmm. That's what the pineal gland is all about. And again, you got to have that connected to your whole being. Your heart has a mind of its own too. You get these gut feelings every once in a while, but that has to be in coherence with your brain. And you have to get those on the same sync. You do that through your chakras, through your meditation, through balancing your system. And if you can get all those things combined, and that's when you get the gut feeling you should go to the right, yet your mind says go to the left, that means you're not in balance. You want to do what your gut says, because that's what's going to lead you in everything that's right. And you might find that this over here didn't make you $1 million, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's what you go by, and that's what I suggest to people. They go by your heart feeling, but again, meditate and get your coherence in connection. Connect your heart with your brain, so that your brain's going to do what your heart says.
I think that's key to the whole Bigfoot topic. Is it's about seeking the truth, and with quantum mechanics being a really good answer to everything as well. Wanting to go out there and discover these things is that desire to figure out the truth to the world and everything around us.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's my desire. If I make any difference at all, that's what I want to do. If I feel like the dots I'm putting together from my 50 years of researching and experiencing this stuff has got to make a difference. And then maybe the reason I experienced it is so I could make this kind of a difference in some people, so they'll be aware of other things going on, that these things exist out there. I don't know I don't think they're all the same, to be honest with you. I think different aliens have messed with the DNA of different species on this planet. And I believe that to be because from what I've seen all over the world where I've traveled, alien intervention into different aspects that we can't duplicate today, like the megaliths in Peru and Bolivia. We can't understand how they've lifted those 100-ton plus boulders up on this 13,000-foot mountain, put them together like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, the Incas didn't do that, and they don't even claim they did it. You see those things with your own eyes, and then see alien remains, which I've seen with these elongated skulls down there, which were not totally human. They had a single, if you've seen it or not, but they got a elongated skull. People say, well, the Incas did that. Well, yeah, the Incas did that, but the Incas were trying to mimic these pre-Inca people, the Paracas people they call them, who had these elongated skulls and who they think contribute to these megalithic structures that are all over in the enigmas you see down there. So the Incas were trying to mimic that, so they cradle-boarded their youth, the royalty, trying to give them the attributes that the pre-Inca people had. But they didn't get more brain matter, they just got a headache, probably. Anyway, it didn't work. As far as I know, it didn't work. But that kind of went down there on 2 different expeditions with 2 different scientists that weighing the skulls and checking them out and all that stuff. And Brian Forrester kind of fostered some DNA studies on those. And my trip down there was mainly to see if the elongated skulls had anything to do with the sagittal crest that people report on Bigfoot up here. The elongated heads like a gorilla has, or even bigger. And not all of them have that, though, but some of them do. So I wanted to see if there was a crumb trail leading up here. And sure enough, the Incas did war with the Mayans, the Aztecs in Central America. They have stories of warring with giants in the north. That takes us in Lovelock Caves, Nevada, where I've been 4 times trying to find out more information. And then you've got the minaret mummies, which were found in Yosemite. You've got the Martindale mummies, which were found in Yosemite. And then you've got the minaret skull, which Dr. Denton found in the minarets of Sierra Nevada mountains. So there's a history of giants on this continent, and in this North America continent. It's all been kind of subdued and taken away by, the word is the Smithsonian has taken away. They did it with the skulls that were in the Lovelock Caves. You can't witness those now. You can't see them.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on previous episodes too. Just the history of not just Bigfoot throughout the ages, but of other cryptids and species and theories and stuff that just get covered up and hidden.
Well, the government, whoever the government is at the time, is going to control the narrative. They're going to downplay somebody if they're under the truth. They're going to make fun of something like the Roswell crash, happened. It was a weather balloon for a long time, wasn't it? Well, now we know it wasn't a weather balloon. It was a UFO, and there was aliens there, 4 of them. And 3 of them died. 1 of them was kept there. So the government doesn't tell you anything they don't want you to know. And there's a lot going on that we just don't know because we're not being told. And you get Antarctica, too. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in Antarctica that's, you got to wonder about that, because that's where the Germans set up something down there after World War II. There's just so much. You can't cover it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just go on and on.
It's all about seeking the truth again. And
and getting to the bottom of it and getting some of these whistleblowers to come out of the closet, because there's a lot of them out there that have been sworn not to talk about it, or their family's going to die or something like that. So, and the government will do that. I hate to say that about our government, but all governments will do that. If they can control the narrative, they are going to control the narrative one way or the other. They're not controlling me right now, and I haven't had any black helicopters hover my house, well, that I know of. And so I don't know if I'm just not worth it or what, but I don't care anymore. I just want the word out, so I'm going to do this as long as I can.
They'd probably feel that if they had black helicopters above your house, then there'd be more of a focus on what you're saying to the general public, too.
That's true. Yeah, it draws attention and said, there must be some validity to that guy, or they wouldn't be doing that. Well, actually, there has been a couple times when those things have happened, but I don't pay any attention to them. I shouldn't say it never happens, but it has happened a couple times. According to my wife, she said, there's a black helicopter hovering over us out here. But I can go out and look. I might get a shot.
I wanted to ask, so finding all these different discoveries and different pieces of evidence from around the world, do you attribute these different types of giants per se to also fitting into the category of like a Bigfoot accessing the quantum realm and changing between dimensions? Or would you have them different with different abilities? Or
I think, Taylor, I'd have them with different abilities because they've evolved differently. They've evolved in different areas differently. And they've been here for eons. They've probably learned some things that we have yet to learn. We have not evolved like we can, like we will, if we learn how to treat everybody better with kindness instead of shooting at them. I think they're different in a way that they may be a subspecies of the same something from way back, but I tend to think that different aliens have been here and they've created different things that will hold up to different environments, and they're practicing, I think, trying to get their species acclimated onto this planet. So that's my opinion. And I think there's hybrids running around right now that you wouldn't know. They look like us. And so, yeah.
I think it's all part of the government trying to keep control going on,
They always will, until they can't. But this social media, this stuff like this is getting out and over. This stuff like this goes all over the world, and it's. I think people are just becoming more and more enlightened. I think that's what the 2012 Mayan calendar was all about: was enlightenment, a time of enlightenment. The age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it. But things like more and more people are being enlightened and being open to, there's more going on. And you just don't see it, you don't feel it, you don't hear it, but it's there. And so many people are experiencing what I'm talking about, and yet they don't talk about it because they don't want to be made fun of. They just they don't want to. They think it's their imagination or something like that. And your brain will talk you out of stuff. What you've learned is what your brain is going to accept until you open your mind up like a parachute. You got to have it open to work. You're not going to expand what you know because you can't accept anything else. So that's why reading and studying and looking into things is so very important, is because that'll open up your mind. And I've been fortunate enough to travel around the world and see so many things, and I've had just one hell of a life, put it bluntly. I'm very fortunate to have been able to do the things I've done and see the things I've seen, and to be able to talk to guys like you on these programs.
I'm very jealous, honestly. You've led a wonderful life, and now with everything coming out there and becoming more open, and it's just snowballing, you're the one behind the snowball pushing it down the hill to pick up more and more traction.
Oh, thank you for that.
I was going to ask you on the topic of some fun subjects and stuff, because you know so much about different cryptids and aliens and topics. Bigfoot's definitely the most popular cryptid. It's got the most weight to it. But what about others? Obviously, there's Loch Ness, there's Mothman, Dogman, etc. Are there any other favorites and stuff that you've been following beyond the Bigfoots and the alien topic in general?
Not following a lot, but like the Dogman, a lot of reports of that. But again, it's the alien intervention into species, playing around with it, acclimating their species to this environment. I think a lot of things happen in the water and the oceans. Some people think octopus are aliens.
They're definitely smart. I watched a documentary on Netflix that was just eye-opening about that.
I mean, I've seen those. I'm a scuba diver too, and I've seen those things change colors right in front of my eyes. And same with the squid. I was working with those one night and caught one, pulled it up, and that thing just sprayed everything, and he changed colors right in front of my camera. I took pictures of him.
Oh, and that just goes right back down to the chemical reactions, quantum, and everything. That goes right into Bigfoot even.
Well, it could. I mean, I'm not sure they have that abilities like that, but who knows? I mean, again, they're not all the same, in my opinion. They're just, of course, it's hard to solve one mystery with another, but if you get into quantum physics and the alien intervention, you can accept some of that better. So I encourage anybody to do that. Bigfoot might just be the smaller picture of this whole scenario we're working with here.
It's definitely the door.
It's my door. And I'm glad. I'm really happy that it happened to me years ago, me and the other guys. And it's just been a great thing to be involved in. And it's becoming more and more people are seeing these things too. They seem to be coming out. I think maybe the younger ones, which, by the way, when they're in our three-dimensional environment, they are subject to our three-dimensional rules, which means they can be shot, they have to eat, they poop, they procreate, they do all those things. So, but when they step out of it, they don't age like we do, number one. If they're stepping out of our 3D, time doesn't exist as we perceive it, linear like we're living right now. And anyway, it's, I think once they have a young one, this is my opinion. Of course, everything is my opinion here. But I think that the young ones have to acclimate into adulthood before they learn how to do some of the anomalies that are associated with the adults.
That's fascinating.
I don't know why we didn't see more of them more often up there. Only got glimpses. Albury never even got a glimpse, but the Johnson brothers seen glimpses of them. I've seen glimpses. Bill McDowell did. My daughter saw them 3 times. They are able to, you can see them, but why we didn't see them more, as much interaction as we had up there. There's times when I had my good tape recorder before it burned up and everything, I had my stereo mics on sticking outside the shelter just like this, out through the walls of the shelter. I had my headset on, turned my micro switch over so I didn't hear a sound clicking it on, and you hear this thing just bipedal walking out there, heavy, real heavy. And you'd think, I was sitting there in my sleeping bag looking, waiting to see the shadow or the break in the logs. Never saw it. Yet I hear the sound out there walking by, but you don't see it. And I've wondered now in retrospect, maybe they were outside of our perception, our visual, or who knows, maybe they can hypnotize us all, because we're all experiencing this stuff up there, and you just don't know how to put it on a plate and talk to somebody about it,
I think you brought up a good point there with the young ones, because that would definitely be a reason for the Bigfoot to materialize and kind of make its presence just a little more known.
Yeah, and you see the rocks being thrown every once in a while. We had it happen once up there, but not at our camp. One of the guys was coming in from a different direction, and he said a big rock was thrown over his head, so he changed directions. And Albury and I went on an expedition up at Lake Almador one time, way back in the woods of these miners, where they were supposedly having these Bigfoot sightings every once in a while, and they said that they're here. And we way back in the wilderness up there, and we stood around the campfire, and this rock went coming by us like a bullet. I mean, just wham, hit this tree, and something with one heck of an arm had to throw that thing, and nothing was down there that could have done that. I mean, maybe something with an arm that big around. Who knows? Mm-hmm. We found the rock the next morning. These guys took off. They said, "We're not spending the night up here." They don't do it. It scares them. But Albury and I kind of got jaded to this stuff, so we're ready to spend the night here. So we did. Found the rock the next morning, a big chunk on the tree where it hit. But it's they do throw rocks if they don't want you there. And I've heard this reported a lot over the years, throwing rocks. In fact, Derek Randall's a friend of mine in the Olympic Peninsula. That's how he saw one time. He had this big rock thrown over his head. They turned around and seen this thing up there. And they got him into it, and he started the Olympic project right after that. And he knows now they're real. And once you see them, once you experience them, okay, this is real. These people aren't talking crazy. There's something really going on out here. So anyway, they're real. I'm 100% sure of it myself. They're not supposed to interfere with what we're supposed to experience. Our karma is ours, and because we have been good dominion on this planet, we are this chosen species. Everybody knows who they are as a human being. They're going to treat life a little better because we're special and we're made by a very special entity. And I think it's from the 9th dimension, possibly. And I got theories on this stuff, but it's from a lot of things I've experienced myself and had dreams about, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's when Tessie got a lot of answers to his problems, when you come out of a dream, because your pineal gland is open to other things. Then your body's rested. You're not analyzing things. You're just having this experience come in, or a vision or something. And some of them are real, and some of them are just made up because of something you experienced that day. And so you're going to play chess the rest of the night,
Mm-hmm.
which that drives you nuts. I used to play chess a lot, and I'd get in a chess game in my sleep, and you can't really get a good sleep, because you're always trying to think.
I always have dreams about work all the time.
Yeah, you got to think.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to think. You're supposed to just be empty and receive. And that's what you do when you meditate. That's why you need to meditate more. The more you can meditate, the more you're going to raise your vibrational frequency. But the key to raising your vibrational frequency is to treat everything with compassion and love, and don't be the victim of things. Be the receiver of information. You can take everything for the good if you understand it that way. You raise your personal vibrational frequency higher, and you'll be ready for the next thing that comes along, whatever it is. Your health will be much better, and treat everybody with something good. We don't want to keep killing this earth and killing each other and hurting each other. That's the wrong thing to do, and it's just not going to help this planet at all. It's not going to help the individual at all.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention, so when you say that Juveniles was something that would be taught on how to access basically a different dimension, is that a representation of they don't have the ability till they age, or they just haven't learned it and have to be taught?
I think they have to be taught. They have the ability to be taught like we do, but they haven't been taught. And I think, because we had a young one up there, and it's on my second, it's on one of my, no, it's on the book, The Voices in the Wilderness, my one book. It's got a downlink of sounds on it. So when I get to the context of sound I'm talking about, you can hear the sound. Well, one of the sounds is when I saw one, the samurai cry, which was coined years ago. He was running down to the other two, which was an adolescent and a mother, we think. You didn't see him. I seen him, but I didn't see them. But you hear them down there. You hear this little voice coming out. We've heard it before, but I never had it recorded before. And then you hear the big one coming down on it. Like, I think they get bold. And I think maybe one of the tests they got, I've heard this through stories, that one of the tests they have is trying to fool the humans. Yeah. And they have to learn how to do what the adults can do before they become adults, I guess. I don't know. That's my opinion.
I think you're right on the money there with that one.
So it's like a discipline, basically, that they're instilling forwards.
Yeah, it's like we do our kids, Somebody, you're going to raise it to learn what you want it to learn.
I got to take my kid out into the woods and get him to trick some Bigfoot.
Well, we found tracks in the snow of a little one with a big track, and those tracks, they can't fake those things when there's no other tracks around, and you got them in the snow. It's not like some guy in a pogo stick would pump through there or something. But you find this little 9-inch track along with an 18-inch track, and there's a little one around, and we've heard the voices, like I say, and actually. But maybe what my daughter saw when she saw one pretty close, and she thought it was just a big black guy standing there, really. She said it was slim, like what it would feel. Broad shoulders, but still slim. And it might have been one of the younger ones we was recording in the 70s when we was encountering him more often. This was in 2000, I forgot what year it was when she saw that, but it was probably 20 years after it first started with us up there. And then I got to tell you, last time I was up there was in 2018, and that's when I did the David Pilates filming the 411 hunted. And he recreated, his videographer did, of this light that went by us in the tent, because the camp's not there anymore. The structure, shelter's been taken down. And but this had a tent set up with an open top, and I saw this light going by. And I poked my partner. I said, "Look at this." And we watched this light just going through the trees. It was an elongated light, probably 3 to 4 foot long, glowing. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? You don't know what it's going to do, but it just kept going until it just went outside. But it just went by us. Like, what for? You don't know. But it's a form of energy, I think. Those orbs that you see, and like what we saw, is some type of an energy form. And if it's because I've heard other people swear up and down they saw an orb turn into a Bigfoot or vice versa. And that happens, that means the matter is turning into energy and vice versa.
It's very fascinating, and especially when you go back through reports and sightings and stuff, there's a lot of notes about little lights and orbs and stuff associated with Bigfoot quite often.
And UFOs. I think Eureka Times had a post in 1888, one of the first accounts of a UFO. It was reported in the Huffington Post in 2012, and it said that this small moon come down and 3 crazy bears jumped out of it. Well, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And I've also talked to people that's had a UFO encounter at the same time a Bigfoot encounter. So figure about 20% of the Bigfoot encounters have a UFO component to them. And that means there's an alien, something going on with the aliens there.
I'm curious is there a more of a heightened kind of UFO encounter scenario these days, or is it just more Bigfoot, or what's kind of taking the precedent over the other?
I think the UFOs are taking precedence because they're being seen so much, much more than the Bigfoots. You go down to South America and Central America, and they're just commonplace down there. You don't even question it. They're just there, and the people talk to them, talk to me like they just see them all the time, and we're seeing them up here too. You know, you got the Phoenix Lights, which are seen by a lot of people, and you got people are seeing these UFOs, and now some of them maybe are reverse engineering from aliens craft, but some of them are probably alien craft too. I think we're on the verge of something really major happening on this Earth, this planet, and if Putin pushes the button over there and we push buttons, well, we could all be eliminated real quick, or we can learn how to turn this world around and start being nice. And I think that's what we got to do to save the planet. And these aliens may intervene at that time, and they're really concerned about what we're doing in this environment because of their wanting to be here. This is the jewel of the solar system, no doubt about it. You know, it's got all the water and everything on it. It's a beautiful planet. And for us just to blow it up and set these bombs off and stuff is just a wrong thing to do. So I think it's got to change, and I hope to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's really an all-encompassing truth.
It feels like there's like a collective conscious awareness kind of coming around with everyone that's just kind of falling into the same category of like we don't want any guns or bombs going off. We want to turn things around, and we all want to be happy at our core.
I think you're right, Taylor. Yeah, I do. Yeah. But there is we're all a part of a one consciousness. We just got to learn how to become one with it. The ancients try to teach us how to become one, and there's a lot of shamans that have become one. That's how quote unquote miracles happen. I don't believe in miracles. Number one, it's just the use of quantum physics, and you can call it a miracle if you want to because it's outside of what you know. You know, anything's a miracle if it involves something you don't understand. I mean, you can call it that, but you find the frequency of anything, you can change its matter. And that's according to Einstein and according to physics. So that's how things can levitate, disappear. Things can happen that we just have to be aware. It's out there. We just don't see it in our three-dimensional environment. You got to open up your mind to understand it.
Yeah, I think that's honestly, that's the final note. Have an open mind, seek the truth, and be kind and love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love and compassion, that's what it's all about. And that's what the masters try to teach us, and that's what we're supposed to learn. But you have people that still, they're off on their own little, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Ego. The ego's got a lot to do with everything.
I think that's a great message, you know. It's love and truth. So on that note, I think it's about time we say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ron.
Thank you for
appreciate
inviting
you.
me. Yeah.
If there's any final closing out notes you wanted to say, by all means, the floor is yours.
No, my website, everything I'm talking about here is in my 2 books, Voices in the Wilderness or Quantum Bigfoot, or my 2 CDs, which are narrated. One of them by Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek, The Next Generation. He narrates. They're both about 40 minutes long. Volume 2 is got the sounds injected. Both of them have sounds that we recorded up there, injected them. My stories in number 2. Al Berry's account, I produced them both, is in volume 1. And you'll hear the aggressive sounds more in volume 1, and my interaction with them in volume 2. And my story, I wrote and produced both of them. And it's they've been out a while. That's what people are able to listen to. They're credited by science. I told you about that. That's it. It's all downloadable on my website, or you can get the hard paperback books delivered to you.
All right. Well, to our listeners, check out Ron Morehead's site. Look into some of his stuff there. It's fascinating. And Taylor, I'll let you take us away with our plugs, and then we'll close things out.
Yeah, you can find us on our website at CryptidClues.ca, and you can find us at our email, CryptidClues@gmail.com, and we're all on social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and all that. So you know where to find us. And yeah, make sure you go check out ronmorehead.com for, like Reuben said, all the information.
And my Facebook, Ronald J. Morehead, Facebook.
Perfect.
I like Facebook.
Thank you again, Ron. To our listeners, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.